everybody, welcome back to Record-ology. This is going to be very interesting. So, I picked up a record player from Goodwill the other day for $9.99. Is it any good? Was it worth 10 bucks? Let's find out. You're not going to want to miss this.
Welcome to Record-ology.
How's everybody doing this week? I hope you had a wonderful, blessed week and a great weekend coming up. Looking forward to it myself. So this thing I bought for $10 basically at a thrift store this past week, about a week ago actually. And every once in a while I just, go into Goodwill or some kind of thrift store and just, see what they got, and not really planning anything necessarily or looking for anything, just stumble across something that I think might make an interesting show, as was the case with this. This bears a striking resemblance to the Vibe record player that got me started in vinyl this last go around. And I always say that because, I obviously was into vinyl as a kid. I just didn't think of it as vinyl. It was records, Anyway, back before I got the Vibe record player, which I love, I was looking at stuff like this. Same form factor, very, very similar form factor. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if it was all made by the same company. But I remember these Jensens being appealing to me at the time, even back in like 2015 or so when I was thinking about getting back into vinyl. I knew that a pitch control was a good thing. So I was attracted to that. Although I think the version that I had, or I was looking at, I should say, had like an SD card and a USB card slot, which I thought was a kind of a cool way to sort of bridge the gap between vinyl and more modern tech that I was listening to at the time, or more modern music, where, digital files, MP3s, stuff like that. That being said, I still think this is cool. I think this is neat. And the premise of a small, all-inclusive, all-in-one, dare I say, record player for somebody getting started, I think it's an interesting thing. It's something we should investigate and see if this would be a good option. Now, I want to start by talking about the size, because when you get into higher end turntables, oftentimes you're dealing with larger units, larger equipment. This thing is so small. It's kind of hard to tell, just with seeing it on screen. So I wanted to put a 12-inch record right over the top to see that this thing is smaller footprint-wise than a record. Than a 12-inch record. This is incredible. It's probably, I think, about 10 inches by 11 inches. It's tiny. It's just amazing what you can fit into a small package. This thing is not portable either. It's designed to be set up and left. It's so small and you would be able to move it fairly easily, but it's not a suitcase player. It's got, built-in speakers, one on each side, which I always say you would think that'd be like the ultimate in stereo separation, but having opposing speakers that shoot out the sides just kind of fills the room more so than giving you a stereo effect. Even if you stand right in the middle, the sound just isn't really hitting you directly. It's just kind of ambient, something to be aware of. Although this does have a headphone jack, so you could listen to records privately. And what I always think about all-in-one units or, self-contained units is that this may be a good option for somebody that lives in an apartment, somebody that has neighbors, above them or below them or next to them or all of the above, and can't be making a lot of racket. It may just want something with smaller speakers and a headphone jack for private listening. So we will give that a go and see how it sounds and functions. This also has the notched dust cover. Because of its size, in order to play a 12-inch record with the dust cover closed, there has to be these gaps, and there is one on the back as well. That triggers some people. I've never really understood that. For me, it's like, fine, whatever. I don't care that there's a gap on this type of a unit. It is what it is. So let's spin it around back and kind of figure out what we got here. Actually get more information on the bottom. So this is the Jensen JTA 230. And having worked in partnership with Jensen on this show, I know that, Jensen, like Crosley, like a lot of companies, Victrola among them, is a reseller. They're a company that resells products made by other companies. And that's pretty much describes almost every company these days. Oh, interesting. This is newer than I thought it was. 2017. I thought because of the lack of the SD card slot and the USB slot that this would have been a little older. I was guessing like 2014. But no, this is in fact just from a couple of years ago. I guess it's 5 years ago now, almost 6. Okay, so it's a little... We've been doing this for almost 6 years, this show, you know what I mean? We got a masonite bottom panel. We've got rubberized little feet there. I don't see any adjustment points for adjusting speed on the motor, but because we have that pitch slider, we shouldn't need to make an adjustment, and that's a good thing. Aux input, it's interesting, the masonite is just continued around the back here. This isn't something you're going to look at every day, so they didn't, spend the time and energy and money to finish this per se, but we do have line outputs, an aux input, and then the AC power supply. Ooh, and USB. So it has USB capability. That is really interesting. A QC sticker. You may be surprised to find something like this with an AC power supply instead of just a DC wall wart. And there's the notch on the back. While we're back here, you can see that. Plastic construction. No big surprise. Probably an ABS. And as we talked about earlier, we've got small speakers on the side. They look like a oval, about maybe 3 inches by 2 inches maybe. So they'll sound small. They're not going to blow us away. Even if they're good small speakers, they're just going to sound probably adequate at best. They might surprise us. And again, looking at this front panel, we've got the headphone jack, these sort of plastic chrome accents, a pitch slider, and there is a little indentation there in the middle. So what we'll do is we'll do a strobe test on this to see how accurately it's calibrated. Power switch, power light, auto stop, on and off. Interesting to see that on the front. A tone control. A lot of people are always saying, man, we should have tone controls. They don't make anything with tone controls. Well, this one has it. That's pretty interesting. And the volume knob. These are plastic knobs. The tone knob has a nice drag to it. This one's a little bit looser. But yeah, looks good to me. Now this thing is filthy. I have not tested this. I have not tried it out. I haven't plugged it in. It could be DOA as far as I know. The only thing I know is just out of habit, when I see a record player in the store, I'll lift up the tone arm and feel to see if there's a needle. And this does have a needle, actually. I thought it didn't. Okay, well, we may need to replace that needle, that stylus. We'll check that out. 45 adapters missing. What should we do about a missing 45 adapter?
Have you ordered your official Record-ology 45 adapter yet? Check out the link in the video description below.
Just a thought, but we could perhaps replace it with one of the Record-ology custom 3D printed ones that you can buy. Link down below. And it fits in there nicely and it looks pretty darn snazzy right there on the record player. I couldn't help it. I could not help it, but this in fact does not have the 45 adapter that came with it. This will be a Skywin type of mechanism of some sort. I don't know if the belt is good or intact. It's got 4 rubber nubs. Interesting that it doesn't have 3. 3 points of contact is always more stable than 4. People love to argue about that, but it just remains fact that 3 points of contact is always more stable. The tone arm looks a little different than a typical Skywin type of mechanism. Let's zoom in, as it were, and get a little closer and see what we got. This may not even really be a Skywin mechanism at all. I've never seen this tone arm. This counterbalance also very, unlike anything I've seen. This is a plastic tone arm, and it is a U shape with the opening on the bottom. So that is just a molded piece of plastic with a wiring going down there. We'll check the tracking force. It does feel pretty heavy. Let's see about that bearing. Bearing it, oops. Well, if it didn't need a stylus before, now it does. It's a little loose, but I've seen worse. We got 3-speed select right there, and that's about it. There's the knockout where the auto stop switch would have been, but as we saw before, it's actually on the front of this unit. Now, what about that cartridge? Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Okay, so I was right. It does not have a stylus intact. In fact, the whole cantilever is missing. What I was feeling there was that bridge. So we will need to replace that. I have a replacement, no big deal. But this is the Chuo Denshi clone. This is an old Sanyo design. This is a ceramic cartridge, which refers to the technology in the body of the cartridge itself, not the stylus. It's not a ceramic stylus. And inherently causes no damage to your records. It's less compliant, meaning it's less flexible and less able to track the grooves of your record. But a stiffer, less compliant stylus cartridge combination could be a good thing if you're playing older, worn out records, garage sale records, thrift store records, or 78s. Obviously, you can upgrade this stylus to be a 3 mil groove compliant wide groove stylus. You can do that as well. But for now, for testing purposes, let's go ahead and replace this broken one, which we're going to do by simply prying off the edge there. Sorry for my disgusting hands. Just get your fingernail in the top there and pull that down and off. It's kind of dusty in there, so I'm going to just give it a little carbon fiber brush action there. All right, looks better. Okay, to put the new one in, we're going to put the back in first and then snap on the front. And there we go. We have a metal cantilever with a rubber boot. And you see that reddish hue to the stylus. That is a sapphire tip. But it'll be perfectly fine for what we're doing today. So now we've fixed the stylus. We need to find out whether or not the belt is working. Then I should be able to, yeah, there we go. So it rotates just fine, which means I don't have to fight with the circlip, the E-clip, pop that off. It wouldn't be that exciting underneath, and the motor would have been over here somewhere. And, you know, it'll save us the pain of having to put the platter back on. So yeah, the motor does work. Whether or not it's spinning accurately speed-wise remains to be seen. I'm going to be looking right here, and as I spin it up, you will see the lines are moving fairly significantly to the left, which means that it's fast. That is not a huge problem though, because we have a pitch control. So I'm going to move that pitch slider on the front to the left, and I'm able to stabilize the speed right about there. I had to move it down about 25%, so it's not calibrated very well. That could indicate that the pitch control wasn't calibrated correctly out of the factory, or it could indicate that the motor is weakening, or more likely that the belt is becoming more hard and dry and possibly stretched out a little bit. Let's go ahead and flip it to 45 right here. I have not moved the pitch slider. It is still at negative 25% position. And see how that is just about perfect in the same position 33 was? Here's back to 33. So the motor speed is consistent between both of those settings, which tells me that it's probably more along the lines of a loose belt. If I go up to 78, which will be up here, it's a little slow. You can see that's marching a little bit to the right, and I can increase the speed on the slider and get that dialed in. So yeah, not horrible because we've got that pitch adjustment. However, if I had this in the neutral position, the pitch slider, you can see that this thing would have been significantly off speed-wise. So yeah, in order to get that about right, I had to move this guy down right in that neighborhood, which isn't horrible. I mean, that's not a huge problem. Keep in mind, this is $10. This was $10. We put on like a $2 stylus. So far, we're at $12. You know what I mean? It's been a very cheap investment, so to speak, so far. The problem with it not being, you know, perfect speed at the central neutral position is that now we've got only 25% of room if we need to make an adjustment, whereas before we would have had the whole range, 50% range, either side to make an adjustment. But with neutral now being down here, it just sort of limits the control that we have. So for what we're doing today, this is actually fine. We can consider this a perfect speed turntable. Feature-wise, that's it. There's not really anything else, you know, on this unit. There's no SD card. There's no Bluetooth capabilities. It has an aux in, but I'm going to save you the boredom of me hooking up an aux input device on this. What we really need to do is test the tracking force of the stylus and then listen to some records on this here record player. Actually, I'm pretty curious to test this because I've never seen this tone arm before and this counterbalance. So it may be a spring-loaded, and I'm curious. Oops. Oh, gosh. I always do that. I always do that. How many of you guys knew I was about to do that? Okay, let's try this again. Okay. Got to be smarter than the record player. Sometimes that's a challenge for me. But anyway, I'm curious. Let's see how heavy it tracks. Should be 5 or 6 grams for this cartridge, and we're tracking just under 5. So a slight bit on the low side for this cartridge. The good news is that's nice and light, and no, it's not so light that it would do damage. You may be saying to yourself, so light that it would do damage. Well, as a matter of fact, arguably, because this is so subjective, but a lot of people say that tracking too light will damage your records more than tracking too heavy. And even more important than the tracking weight is really that you get a stylus in which the jewel, whether it be a sapphire like this one or even better, a diamond, is cut correctly so that it is not some jagged, gouged edge dragging its way and scraping its way through your records. So if you don't have a jeweler's magnifying glass, a loop as it were, you may have a hard time determining that. So I would just, buy the nicest stylus that you can afford and observe if it seems to be wearing out your records, and maybe upgrade your stylus. But yeah, now we just need to listen to some records. Okay, I went on the front mic so we can hear these speakers ambiently together. So let's go ahead and start with the 45, just to be different. It's on 45 RPM. We're going to listen to this guy right here, a Peter Pan record. This is Henny Penny. I remember this as a kid, 1979. And let's go ahead and give it a listen. Stylus right there. Turn the unit on.
Lucy, Goosey Lucy had a friend whose name was Chicken Licken.
Meanwhile, from a ship in orbit, Jim Kirk's son, David Marcus, studied the new Genesis planet. His was a special interest, since he had helped build the machine that created the planet. Surprised by what his instruments showed, David turned to his half-Vulcan friend.
Lieutenant Savick, I'm getting a life form reading from the planet's surface. And there shouldn't be anything down there but rocks and plants.
Savick frowned.
We'd better beam down and investigate.
When the pair materialized on the planet, David saw a black metal tube lying open on the ground nearby.
That's Spock's casket. But his body, it's gone.
A small earthquake shook the ground. Savick examined her tricorder.
Readings indicate this planet is highly unstable. And the life form you detected is moving off in that direction. Let's go before it gets away.
Sounds great. For this type of thing, this is perfect. It sounds totally fine. It sounds, full range. You can hear the full range of sound. And I think that's cool. So that's really fun. Let's do 78 now. Interesting how 45 and 33 are molded into the plastic, but 78 is a sticker. It's just interesting how they get to the final product there. For the 78, I'm going to play a vintage Walt Disney Mouseketeer record. And this is a beautiful orange pressing. And the reason why I'm going for this is because it'll be 78 RPM. Now, I don't have the wide groove stylus on this cartridge right now, so it's going to sound noisier and hissier than it would otherwise, but we'll get the idea. Plus, it's kind of a worn record anyway.
As you lovely in your house and watching some TV. We're all happy kids when you're in our house. We have fun and lots of laughs because you're Mickey Mouse. Here comes Donald Duck. We like you and Goofy too.
Boy, are we in luck!
I'm a happy mouse, and I ought to be.
We featured this record on the show before. This was a mail-in cereal record, General Mills. And this was originally sent to Miss Delilah DeMars in Sutton, Massachusetts back in the mid-50s. I think the child filled out this part, and somehow it made it back in one piece, although it's pretty ragged now, as you can see. The idea was you collected different records in the set. So this was record number 1. So wouldn't that be cool? I wish they did that today. Boy, I tell you what, I've eaten a lot of cereal. Okay, so we've got Future Sound Shock Enoch Light and the Light Brigade. Kind of gave that away earlier when I was showing you the size of the record player compared to the size of a record itself. Yes, this is still spinning at 78 RPM, so let's flip it down to 33. This is going to sound adequate, I'm sure. It's not going to blow us away, but let's give it a fair chance.
Mind if I say you're cute? I don't believe that we met. In every way you're cute.
You can see from the top that it tracks fairly accurately at the outset of a 12-inch record, but by the time you get in here, the tracking angle is way off. this thing doesn't sound half bad at all. It's actually properly impedance matched, which is the most important thing when trying to get good quality from a ceramic cartridge. Okay, maybe secondary importance to having a non-damaged or miscut stylus, but having a properly impedance matched cartridge is huge. So I'm glad to see that's the case with this. This is a great $10. This is a no-brainer. This is I feel like worth more in the range of 40 for what you're getting. The sound is clean. It's a boxy kind of hollow sound, but it's not gutless like a lot of ceramics, a lot of suitcase players. It has a decent full range sound. So pleasantly surprised in the sound quality aspect. Tracks nice and light, won't damage your records. The speed can be brought to perfect with the pitch adjustment. This is a very, very cool record player. It does a lot. Even without the SD card and the USB, forgot about all that. I don't need any of that junk. This thing will play 3 speeds of records very well. And it's got aux input, headphone jack. You can't go wrong. So in this case, this was a very good buy at $10 at the local thrift store. And I would encourage you to keep your eyes out for something like this. Now, I didn't even clean this thing up. I didn't even dust it off. As you can see, it's still kind of dusty, but wipe it down, buy yourself the Record-ology 45 adapter, the stylus and the unit itself. You've made a fairly minor investment for a good starter turntable or a good secondary turntable. If you wanted one for your office, for your bedroom, for somebody just getting into vinyl, this would be a great place to start. And no, it wouldn't turn them off to vinyl because it has bad sound, because it doesn't have bad sound. It's got decent sound. And with the headphone jack or the aux output, you would get even a little bit better sound. So yeah, I think this is a thumbs up. All right, my friends, and that is going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, this video. Let me know down in the comments below if you have this record player, what your thoughts are on it, and if you would have snagged this for the price. Like, I kind of think that a lot of people would snag this even if they didn't need another record player, either for a project or a secondary one or something for somebody just getting into the hobby of vinyl. It packs quite a wallop for $9.99, and it's a lot of record player in a very small space, a very small footprint that it has. There's a lot of things going on. I hope you enjoyed this video nonetheless, and I want to say a huge thank you, my friends, for being there each and every day and each and every week. We've got a lot of fun stuff coming your way. I am on the brink, and it'll probably be this next week, of something I've been working on for weeks and weeks. It is going to be a very cool and very fun video with a special celebrity guest appearance. I cannot wait to share that with you. But for now, that's going to do it. So happy record hunting, my friends. We'll see you next time.